Thank you. I'm going to talk today about, let's call it the less sexy solution for the 2020 sulfur cap. But perhaps we will not be talking much about the environmental element, but the opportunity element. So, what we listen to when we talk about scrubbers, and especially the criticism they have received with regard to retrofitting, what we listen to is that everybody wants to adopt the wait-and-see scenario, that ship owners are not paying for the fuel bill themselves, and the cost will inevitably be left to the charters, that perhaps there will be an availability issue in HFO after 2020 because the market will be shrinked, and of course, since the large part of shipping will stay with the compliant fuels, there will be no competitive advantage, no competition distortion by the use of scrubbers. So, talking about what can happen in 2020 and where are we now. This is a big diagram showing the market of fuels, and you can see that light purple zone where we see that is the question factor about scrubbers. What will be the eventual market share of scrubbers after 2020? So today, 45% of fuel oil in the world goes to shipping, and at the same time 5% of global middle distillates market is channeled to the shipping sector as well. 300 million tons annually, consisting of 80% HFO and 20% distillates. So what is going to happen after 2020? We will see a 35% deficit in fuel oil demand globally, and approximately a 15% increase in the demand of middle distillates that will go to shipping. It seems like that the fuel oil market will be more difficult to adapt than the distillates market. And of course, we have to wait to see the strategy of certain refineries and refinery sectors among the planet, meaning that we will see regional imbalances, and this is why perhaps some ship owners are already considering and charterers their buying strategy on a geographical basis. So where are we today? The numbers are coming from Clarkson's in 2017. The numbers here is around 300. We can expect that there are a number of recent installations, along with the fact that these numbers refer to perhaps larger vessels. But what we can see is a wide spread out of the uses of installations of scrubbers among different types of ship segments. So, of course, the vast majority comes from the cruise and passenger scale, then ro-ros, tankers, gas carriers, even bulk carriers. So we can see today every type of ship having adopted and tested this solution. So this is a table where we see the exact numbers for ships, and the fact that we as Lloyd's Register, we have already carried out, and the numbers are here, not so recent, we have exceeded quite a lot, the 60 vessels and 60 cases of installations of scrubbers. So there's nothing to imply that there's a lack of experience and expertise in these installations. We have seen problems, we have seen solutions, and with the ECA-zone's adoption, we have the time to test our ability with scrubbers. So going to the anatomy of the scrubber market, so we have 60 to 90,000 ships that are potential candidates for scrubbers until after 2020. And what we see today is that we're not going to have more than 2,000 ships fitted with scrubbers. In the assumptions made by several analysts, we see 1,200 projection by CE Delft, 2,000 ships projection by IEA, 7,000 by FGE by 2025, and 10,000 by the Bank of America for 2025 basis again. So scrubbers may constitute the preferable alternate solution to the status quo, compliant fuel, but they seem to have no dynamics to dominate the market, to change the market. So as things stand, they could be considered outliers to the vast majority of vessels using LSFO and blends. The vast pool of shipowners, therefore, will continue competing in the field of compliant fuels, while other regulatory requirements like decarbonization will challenge the scrubber uptake by the end of the next decade. So, right now, as we see things, most probable scenario is that scrubbers could gain a share of the market around 10% of the fleet in numbers. So talking about the risk of scrubbers, we have a number of risks to work with. Operational risks. Crews will have to deal with several types of fuel, especially if we take into account that perhaps many of us would prefer an open loop solution so that things become simpler in terms of installation and management. So we have at least 3 types of fuel, and we have to manage segregation, operation, demonstration of compliance with too many authorities around the world, and this will be quite demanding. We have the availability risks as well. So a separate HFO supply chain will need to be maintained. We have the financial risks and the fact that the oil industry will have to maintain this supply chain for years with no secure consumers. And then there is the compliance risk as well. Wastewater control of discharges, enforcement issues that may rise, the use of high sulfur fuel oil in ships, on ships, will demand further perhaps regulatory intervention in the years to come. So, talking about compliance, we know today that scrubbers are governed by IMO EPC Resolution 286/59. We have 2 schemes for approval there. One is based on a, let's say, type approval basis. We test the scrubber, we check some parameters, and we certify with an emissions compliance certificate. Scheme B, as we call it, is about continuous monitoring of SOx emissions by the scrubber. And today we have wastewater discharge requirements for acidity, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, turbidity, and nitrates. But as we have seen, we already have an arsenal of local regulations about discharges, and we're going to see that increasing in the years to come and perhaps becoming more stringent. So it's difficult to presume to project what will be the requirements in the future. At the same time, however, there is a great opportunity being forward. Forward price curves for the price premium of compliant fuel over HFO already show a $250 cap. Forecasts imply a projected initial cap of $400 per ton, while the most bearish, let's say, projections make reference to $600 per ton. And we have analysis implying that the cap will start widening even before 2020. So a scenario about what could happen is the following. We already have seen it. What we have to mention here is that we see the cap widening much more due to the drop of the fuel oil price as we expect on supply and demand basis, rather than the increase on the demand of distillates. So, making a simple projection of what is going on and taking into account the scenario for the maximum cap and the lowest cap, and what we call the stabilized cap, what we project to see when the market will be smooth. So we can see today that in contrast to long-term type charter for several types of vessels, we can see that net returns from the installation of a scrubber are comparable to the overall returns of the vessel itself. So if you think about it, in some occasions you can have the same return with 1/10 of the investment. Even under a stabilized cap, you can still see net returns that would justify any investment. And take into account the following scenario, let's say the average between the highest 400 US dollars initial cap and the lowest, the current projection of forwards of 250 US dollars cap, we will see that what is important is making decisions at the right time. So the return on investment for 2020 in comparison with 2021 and 2022 is significantly higher. And since we are talking about high return investment, if we see the payback period for a RoPax in the Aegean or a Capesize or a VLCC or an Aframax or a container ship feeder, we can see that the longer we wait, the longer the payback period will be, and the more probable for this to fall into the change and the increased pressure in legislation for scrubbers or other alternative fuels prevailing. So, how can we help about this? And how can we help you in making decisions? First of all, we have already set up the right framework for rules and notations, and we have already set up also a scrubber-ready notation with a preliminary assessment stage, structural reinforcement review, and tanks installed review for scrubber-ready stages. We have a set of rules specifically applying on the engineering aspects of scrubber installations, and of course we also review the deniable aspects like structural stability, etc. What is important though is that anybody who wants to see a scrubber installed on a LR vessel, it would be much more wiser to come with us early, discuss the proposed solutions, any shortlisting, see the compliance options and the risks against them, the materials, the financial and the feasibility assessment, validate all these givens, and of course we can also work on a joint industry project approach with makers and owners that want to go perhaps beyond the current level of technical expertise. And of course when it comes to financing, we could also support you there when it comes to the validation of any pay-as-you-save scheme, for example. So, in concluding, what we can respond to the rumors we listen to is that, first of all, acting now, we can wait for it, but acting now may be the most profitable action. We can have a deal with charters, and this is very important because we need to start discussing this today and not at the latest stage. And of course, well, about availability, yes, there may be a problem, but we don't see that yet happening. So it seems like there will be HFO at least for the few years right after. And of course, large part of shipping will stay with compliant fuels, so there's no reason for risk, there will be no high competition about it. But there is an opportunity there to be an outlier and to differentiate. So we expect that in 2020 we will have a cap widening, and this will be based on fuel oil surplus mainly and less to the distillates demand. Scrubbers are not risk-free. Their availability after a small share of the projected of the marine fuel market and the compliance challenges are among the greatest risks we see there. The best medicine to scrubber risk is one, swift payback, and this may come with early adoption. If fears do not come true and we don't see something extravagant with the framework of scrubbers, scrubbers will continue offering adequate net returns over a longer period of time. And of course, talking about these returns, there's also a hedging against weak freight rates or turmoil in the market in the years to come. So we can support you in making the right decisions from class and advisory point of view, and we are at your disposal for safe applications. Thank you.